Hello, 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 hello. How are ya? Great to be here with you. I see my tools are in the limelight, so let's move them a little bit away and then we can join one another. Hey, it's the holiday season, and I know that for some that brings a lot of ups and downs. For others, there's only downs, and for others, there's only ups. But yoga, the Buddhist teachings, Tibetan teachings, guide us to consider the way up and the way down as really two sides of the same coin. Neither of them lasts. In fact, nothing lasts forever. There is nothing that is permanent, and there are things we can influence and things we can't. So maybe our best bet is to focus on the things that we can do, like choose the way we respond to things. That said, today is all about the back, the low back, in fact. And I was just reminded of, when was the last time we each thought about our low back when it wasn't in pain? Maybe when we're lifting something, we remember to bend our knees, and we think, oh, gotta bend my knees so I don't hurt my back. But mostly we notice things like the feet or the low back or the neck when they hurt. So what if we could prevent some of that hurt, some of that pain, or at least minimize it? So today, I know I've done a class similar to this before, but I have some additional guidance for you. So me, Karen, at Salt and Sand Studios in Vermont, I'm going to share with you today. We'll practice together some things that are supportive of your low back, both in terms of having the strength to support the low back, but also being careful with it. So point number one is whenever you're doing a forward fold, if you're coming up out of a forward fold, even if your hamstrings feel really loose, do not force yourself to reach the ground. Bend your knees. When you're coming up out of a forward fold, you breathe out rather than in. Most of the teachings instruct us to breathe in as we open up and out as we fold. But when you have a bad low back or a consistent bad low back, when you rise, it's a halfway lift with a breathe out, and then we continue all the way up with a breath out. So that is guidance number one. But the first thing is, how do you love your low back? Well, I think you know the answer. It's child's pose. So if you want to grab a blanket or a pillow to put underneath your belly, you could do that. Either way, big toes touch, feet are wide. Draw your sitting bones back toward your heels. If that's too much for you, place a blanket behind your knees. You really want the length to come from the tailbone all the way to the fingertips, with your forehead resting on something. Now, if your shoulders get a little grumpy here, you can always bend the elbows left and right. You could maybe stack your hands and put your head on them, or you just touch the index fingers together. It's the best thing you can do because it gives you an opportunity to focus. Nice big breath in, full breath out. Let everything relax downward. Let's use some sound in that out breath to help us draw the tailbone toward the heels. Breathe in. Consider what it is that brought you to your mat today. And establish an intention for your practice. And maybe it has nothing to do with the physical aspects of yoga. Maybe something to do with emotions associated with the holiday season. or maybe it simply has something to do with how you're going to live out your day today. As you repeat that intention to yourself 3 times, slowly rock your head left and right. Very gently come into a tabletop, but we're going to use the forearms to do that. So you'll tuck your forearm, your elbows in a little bit. Bring your knees to the mat as wide as your shoulders, and then your feet as wide as your knees. Now, I have now suddenly dropped my belly, which is not great for my spine. So I'm going to draw the belly in, make some real estate between my shoulders. This alone is very strength building and great for the back because it is building strength in your core. If you press the shoelace sides of your feet into the mat and imagine that your fingertips and the heels of your hands and your forearms are kind of dragging the mat back, you're starting to create some strength in your arms as well. Take the left foot and leg and lengthen the leg out to the left so that you can bring the outside edge of the foot down to the ground. You want it coming as straight out of your hip as possible. So you might have to take a look at it. And here we're going to work our cats and cows. It's a little harder than the normal cats and cows, but it also involves more of the muscles of the body. What it also does, I hope you can feel, is it forces your tailbone down a little bit. So now we're lubricating the spine, something that is much needed, especially in the cold and as we get older and when we're stressed. And that tilting downward, if you will, of the tailbone is protecting your low back. All right, we're going to swing that left leg way over the right calf, as far away from the mat as you can, the shoelace side of the foot on the floor, and then drive that leg away and back. You might have to scoot your arms back a little bit until the front of your left hip is coming as close to your right heel as possible. This is not a pigeon pose. It's a glute stretch. So as I was writing the description for this class, I was talking about how natural it is that we remember, the hip bone's connected to the knee bone's connected to the ankle bone. And I thought, well, all of the things that are connected to the back are so important. The glutes, the hamstrings, the low back muscles themselves, the core muscles, so the low belly and your locks, your pelvic lock, your low belly lock, your obliques. We're going to come back up into our forearm tabletop and just come into a couple breaths for a child's pose. You might need to straighten yourself out. And we return to the tabletop, just double checking. Out breath when the belly drops, and then in breath. In breath when the belly drops, and then out breath when you arch into your cat. When you're ready, you'll take that right leg and shoot it out to the right, straight out of the hip. If you can, the foot is parallel to your mat, and have energy in the outside edge of that foot. And now we take our cats and cows here. Maybe a little step, crackle, pop. I've got that going on. But I can really feel the impact, the strengthening across the tops of the shoulder blades, in the belly, in the inner thigh. I can work my left glutes by pressing the top of that foot into the ground. My back feels protected. All right, when you're ready, a lift of that right leg, sweeping around and above the left calf as far away from you as you can. Place the shoelace side of the foot on the ground and glide the front of the right hip toward your left heel. The arms might have to come back to accommodate. A yoga therapist once said to me that there was what did she call it? A glute epidemic, in that everyone's glutes are loose because we don't use them. Walking, we often don't engage the glutes to help propel us forward. We sit a lot. And next, we can come back to our tabletop. We're going to walk our hands forward, lifting the elbows off the mat, and then come to your fingertips. Looks like you might not be able to see me, so I'll back up a little bit here. So your sitting bones are toward your heels. Your knees are a little bit wider than your feet. We're going to take a walk over to the left. Maybe the hands come all the way off the mat. Go as far as you can without lifting your sitting bones away from your heels. And then if you can, you're going to bring your forearms down and drop your head. You might even take the right palm and place it on the back of the left hand. Nice big stretch. Feel the rib cage open up. Torso long. Maybe you feel it in your underarm. Inhale toward the center. And here your belly is not just kind of hanging out. Well, it might be. But as a reminder, it's very slightly active in and up. Walk the hands over to the other side. And find your sitting bones toward your heels and your stretch along the left side of the body. And we're going to come forward. And we're going to make our way to a seat. We're going to do a few things that are very low on the mat today, and then we'll do a little bit of standing work. So in our seats, when our legs are crossed, sometimes the knees are way up above the hips. Sometimes we hunch because we can't sit up straight. My advice to you is to sit on something to bring the buttocks higher than the hips slightly and allow the knees to rest a little bit. The other thing you can do if you have trouble sitting up straight, and many of us do because our posture is sort of rounded forward due to screens and all that kind of stuff, you could sit with your back against the wall. Dance. Come on. All right. So we're sitting nice and tall. We drop the hands and we shrug the shoulders up. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And then we bring them behind us and drape them down the back. And take 2 more of those. Squeeze up. Back. Release. Feels so good. Up. Back. And release. So I mentioned forward folds. So who thinks, not that I can see you, raise your hand if you think the only fold is a standing fold, because it's not. So we're going to move our way into folds sitting. There's also a fold lying down, which happens to also be an inversion, legs up the wall as an example. So we're going to take our feet on our legs and we're going to stretch them up, but we're going to keep a nice little bend in our knees. The analogy I came up with recently, because I'm a big Great British Baking Show person, is when you're folding, whether it's standing or seated, think about spreading frosting on a cake, and your thighs are the cake. So you're reaching forward, you're breathing out, and your belly is the frosting. Mine definitely is frosting that you're spreading down your thighs. We keep the knees bent because we want to make sure that the back can be straight. Now, if you're stretchy enough and your heels can come more away from you without a lot of rounding and blah, go ahead and allow that to happen. But you want your heart open, your shoulder blades together, not rounded, and your back straight. And we'll rise up. We'll use the inner thighs to make the feet and legs into a V. I shifted backward a little bit to make that happen. My quads were involved. Now we're going to face the left knee. Same thing here. We're going to really work to almost like we're zipping up the belly to the thigh. I'm going to bend my knee a little bit. My quads are a little tight. And I'm not going to go very far because I will end up rounding my spine. It's not a competition, so just because we can reach the head to the knee does not mean we're doing it safely. And we sweep around to the center, same thing. Maybe knees are bent, your belly is in, you're working your heart open and your spine straight. You can always use your elbows to spin the thighs outward. We'll rise up, face the right knee, maybe bend it, and find our fold. Great for the spine, good for the hips, good for the thighs, sometimes even the shins, the Achilles heel, the heart. We'll come back around to the center and fold. Rise back up. Squeeze the toes into a fist and then let them explode. Pow! Squeeze the toes into a fist, let them go. Woo! And one more time. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Spread those toes, reach the heels. Now with the hands. Fists, fist, fist. And ta-da! Fists, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Force the release. And a third time. Let's work a little with our wrists now. Left arm is long, palm faces forward. The other hand helps you press that palm back to get, ideally, the aim here is 90 degrees. Mine's only about 45, but we work there. And then we point the fingers down, same thing. Oftentimes, this is the area that is the most difficult for us. Carpal tunnel is tight. Maybe the cubital tunnel is tight up by the elbow, the inner elbow. And then we flip it over like, oh, hello, welcome. And press the palm. This has nothing to do with the spine, except that if you have not drawn your belly in and up, you're going to find yourself sinking down and hunching forward. Same thing on the other side. Fingers up, palm forward. Use the left hand to help that stretch. On knee is much deeper on the right side. And then fingers face down. And then, oh, well, let's try this way. All right, so now we're going to work our way into vinyasas. We're going to do a few of them before we do a little bit of hip opening and then some back bending. So in all of these cases, we will be focused on the low back. how we're building the muscles here and here and here and here to support the low back. So find your way into a tabletop. We're going to start with a high crouch or high squat. So left foot comes outside the left hand, right foot outside the right hand. Your knees are slightly bent, your feet are parallel, and your elbows are resting on your thighs. So here, if your belly is just hanging out, again, you want to draw your tailbone downward, neck nice and long. You can interlace your fingers if you like. And here we find a few cats and cows. And then we take a forward fold. Now I have my feet wide, so I can actually reach the ground pretty fine without hurting my back. But if I move my feet closer, I start to feel a pull on my hamstrings. If I'm pulling on my hamstrings, then I'm pulling on my low back. So I'm going to bend my knees a little bit, drop my head. Let's take a sway left and right. And we'll land on the left side, fingertips touching. If you need a bend in your right knee, take it. But you're working that right hip back and your neck is loose. Sway to the right. Maybe bend your left knee, but your IT band should be opening for some of us. Hamstrings join in. Come forward. Now is the time for the half lift. I like to take my hands under my knees. For some people, they need to use their thighs. The knees drop. The spine gets long. The belly is in. So here you want your collarbones opening up, the belly strong, your sitting bones reaching back, and your shoulder blades reaching toward your sitting bones. Nice long spine. Breathe in. Exhale, forward fold. Now, as I mentioned earlier, rather than inhaling to the halfway lift, we're going to exhale. So breathe in. Exhale, halfway lift. Nice long spine, 2 full breaths. Next exhale will be a forward fold. Forward fold, hips lift. Slowly on your next out breath, soften your knees and rise up. We'll meet in mountain pose. So the question is, where did you feel that most? If you felt your low back tweaking, then you probably need to bend your knees more and draw your belly in. Look, I look really tall. It's great. Arms sweep up overhead. We're going to interlace the fingers and send the palms to the sky. Get really, really tall. Keep the inner edges of your feet as tight to the mat as the outer edges of your feet. And take a tilt over to the right. Belly should be slightly in and up. I'm actually squeezing my thighs, so I'm going to loosen them a little bit. Glutes are activated. Inhale, rise up. Exhale, tilt the other way. Feel the rib cage on the right side. Opening, 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 getting broader, but like moving from a little, I don't know, kayak to a canoe to a ship. Rise up. Go ahead and take the left hand, place it behind your neck or between your shoulder blades. And for me, that tends to shift my hips forward. So I'm going to bend my knees a little bit, draw my belly in, and take a hold of the left elbow with the right hand. And see if you can get those fingers on the left hand to creep down more between your shoulder blades. Belly drawing in. As you see, my head comes forward a little bit, telling me that my shoulders are not very open. And then the other side. Right hand, left hand takes the right elbow. We bend the knees so that the low back can be straighter. Draw into cactus shape arms. You might straighten your legs. And now we're going to see if we can keep our hips squared up with the front of the mat. Oh, we're in cactus shape, aren't we? And then we're going to take a twist. You're not going to twist very far, because if you twist far, you start to twist from the knees. We don't want to torque the knees. So we're just going to move from the belly button upward. And we don't twist the shoulders more. We keep it all in line. Inhale, front and center. Exhale, twist to the other side. Inhale, front and center. Take eagle arms. Right elbow comes under left. 1 rep or 2. Elbows lift shoulder height or higher. Now we're going to do this next movement in 2 different ways at 2 different times. So this way is soften your knees a little bit, just a teeny bit, and then draw the belly in, round the back, tilt the pelvis forward, and aim your elbows for your navel. Inhale, rise up. 2 more times. As you rise up, arms spread wide, open up your heart, drop your hands behind you, draw the belly in and up, lift from the place between your shoulder blades up through the center of your heart, and drop your arms, a little back bend. If it helps to bend your knees, go ahead, but you don't want to send your pelvis too far forward. Rise up, hands by your sides. This time palms will face up as we lift the arms out left and right. As if we're giving something away. It's your prize. We're going to take the left elbow underneath the right, 1 rep or 2 for your eagle arms. Elbows lift, shoulder height or higher. A teeny bend in your knees. Draw the pelvis forward. Exhale, scoop that belly in, elbows toward your navel. Breathe in. Breathe out. We're going to rise up with a breath out. Release the arms nice and wide. This time we drop the hands behind, interlace or hook the fingers, hopefully the awkward way. And then we're going to find our way into a chair pose. So the knees bend. So rather than, I'm going to take my hands away for a second. Rather than a chair like this, we're working toward a chair like this. I don't know if you can see that difference. Rather than working toward a chair like this, which is quite natural for me because I have lordosis, this extra arch in my low back, we're driving the pelvis forward and bringing our hands behind our backs. Collars open, belly in, pelvis forward. On an exhale, fold over your legs. If you can maintain your bound, feel free. Release the hands to the mat. Remember what we do on our halfway lift. Maybe the knees bend more, but we breathe out. Exhale, release. Step back, high plank. If you like, you can move into a low plank. I'm still resting my wrists, so I'm going to drop my knees. Low plank, elbows in, into your back bend. As deep or shallow as you like, shoulders away from the ears, and then back to your downward facing dog. We breathe in, we breathe out. Rise to the tiptoes, press the chest toward the thighs, then bend your knees a lot. Look to your hands and make your way to them. That was a slippy mat on my part. Forward fold. On an exhale, halfway lift. Stay here, extra breath. Forward fold. On an exhale, rise to stand. Arms up overhead. Exhale, hands to your heart. Samasthihi. We're going to find our chair another way. This is another methodology to support your low back. So I will turn to the side. You can see I already have a little bit of extra bend in my low back. I'm going to tilt my tailbone forward. Everyone's going to tilt your tailbone forward. And we're going to shift forward from the hips. So your back is as straight as it would normally be. And then we'll bend the knees to sit. So keeping that pelvis drawing forward. We're going to rise to the tiptoes. Sink down. Stay low, bring your heels to the ground. Lift the toes off the mat, spread them wide. Keep that pelvis forward, belly in, and then the toes come back down to the mat one at a time. Once again, we'll rise to the tiptoes. Sink down. Woo! Stay there. Drop the heels, draw the belly in, tilt the tailbone forward. Beautiful. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale. Exhale, rise, half lift. Inhale. Exhale, forward fold, step back, high plank. If you can stay in your high plank for a moment, bring your left foot more to the center of the mat, lift your right leg, and cross your ankles. Reach your heels behind you. Maybe a little rock forward and back. Maybe a press into downward dog with crossed ankles. Inhale, forward, high plank, uncross. Cross left ankle behind right. Reach the heels back. Maybe a movement forward and back. Maybe a downward dog with crossed ankles. Inhale, forward, high plank. Unhook your leg, knees down, all the way down to the mat. We're going to move into our back bends. That wasn't too bad, eh? 2 vinyasas. So we're going to move to a shoulder opening first before we go to our back bends. So you're going to bring your arms in a cactus shape. Probably a little hard to see me if you're trying to. Into a elbows the same level as your shoulders, but your forearms are outside your mat. You're going to bring your feet a little bit wide. We're going to turn the left ear to the mat. Press the bony hips toward the mat. Lift the navel a little bit. Now we're activated. We're going to turn our heads the other way for a few breaths to make sure we're getting our neck movement in. And turn your head so the left cheek is on the mat once again. Take your right hand, place it just under your right shoulder. So your elbow is bending up toward the sky like Batwoman ears. Did she have ears? I know Batman did, or does. Now we're going to use that right hand to push ourselves away, roll onto our left side, and maybe lift that right leg, maybe stretch the left arm forward, maybe drop the right foot behind the left calf or thigh. And we're going to roll back. Arms return to a cactus, forehead to the mat, knees bend, a little windshield wiper motion of the shins. Drop the feet again. This time, right ear to the mat. Arms should be in cactus shape. Elbows shoulder height, arms parallel to the mat, and your pelvis, your bony hips in the front of the body are pressing into the mat as the navel slightly lifts away. Left hand with fingers wide, just outside your chest or underneath your left shoulder. I'm going to use that arm to help push us onto our right side. either keeping your cactus shape with your right arm or stretching it in front for a deeper shoulder stretch. You can keep that left leg lifted. You can draw it tight to the right leg. You can bend your knee and bring the foot behind your right leg. Roll back onto your belly, cactus shaped arms, left ear onto the mat. And right ear onto the mat. We're going to take Sphinx next, and then we're going to move into a little back bend series. So hopefully by now you'll be able to isolate how you tilt your pelvis forward. If you're standing, often that's bending your knees. If you're lying down like we are right now, you're going to feel your thighs come to the mat a little more closely, and you want the navel to lift away. So our next back bend will be just like we did at the beginning of class with forearms on the mat. So a sphinx. Elbows are under the shoulders. Forearms as much as possible are rolled onto the mat. Fingers are wide. And you're drawing the mat backward with your fingertips and your arms. Now, if this is dumping a lot of energy into your low back, first thing to do is widen your legs. Then lift the navel and press into the forearms. The energy of feeling like you're drawing the mat backward is what helps you get into the back bend. Then you release the shoulders from the ears and draw the shoulder blades together like you're knitting. You're knitting a little sock. If this is too much, maybe widen your knees more and see if you can loosen your glutes and re-breathe. If you would like a little bit more of a quad stretch to be added to this, which I would because I need that for my quad and my hip flexor and my piriformis, I'm going to bend my knees and draw my feet toward my bottom. That's a lot of work. We come all the way down to the mat. Maybe windshield wiper your legs again. And then we'll move into our little series that builds into locust pose. Okay, feet, legs on the mat. Forehead on the mat, arms stretched up so that your wrists or hands are pointing or resting on like the upper corners of your mat. You can spread your feet a little bit wide. We're going to start again by lifting the navel from the mat and tilting the bony hips in the front of the body toward the mat. That lengthens your lower back. From the right hip all the way to the right toes, lift your right leg off the mat. Your glutes will probably squeeze. You might feel your hamstrings active. If you reach your heel instead of your toes, you might find other parts of the body are active. And lower it. Without lifting the body from the mat, lift the left arm. It doesn't have to come very far. You might feel it in your shoulder, your tricep. But again, check with your low back. Draw the navel in, tilt the pelvis down to take the energy out of the low back. Drop the arm. Pelvis toward the mat, navel lifts, left leg lifts from the hip up. Reach your heel if you want to give that a little trial. Reach your toes and drop the leg. Drawing that low back long, activating the belly, the right arm floats. Now I said it was locust, it's more like Superman. So this time, right leg, left arm lift. Draw that belly in. This is a lot of work. Protect that low back. And release. On an exhale, lift the left leg and the right arm. Guess what happens next? Those two limbs come down. We tuck the pelvis toward the mat. Lift the navel up and all bits come off the ground. And breathe here. Think long. Beautiful. We move into a child's pose. Taking your time. Breath moves along up and down the spine and left to right and right to left across your low back, your sacrum. So we never did the second round of scooping the belly in while we stand. That's something you can do in chair. You can also do it against a wall. But I was pacing, and there are certain things I want to include that make sense after back bend. So I didn't follow through on the second round. All right, we are going to come to seated so we can move into a twist. Actually, we're going to come to, seated. Just checking the time. So a couple of options here. The right heel comes under the left thigh as close to the buttocks as we can get it. You can either take the left heel and scoot it right into that little curve of the front of the ankle, or if you're stretchy enough, you can take that foot outside the right thigh. But you want to sneak that right heel as close as you can to the buttocks and press the left foot down as much as possible. We sit up really strong, really tall. Our left hand comes behind us and we twist to the left. Drawing the shoulder away from the ears. So you might remember we now have done every orientation of the spine. It's straight up and down, the twist left and right, the tilt left and right, the forward fold, and the back bend. And now we've come back to the twist. All right, we're going to come forward. We'll go ahead and stack logs. So take your right foot forward just a teeny bit so your shin is maybe parallel to the front of your mat. And your left ankle comes atop your right thigh. If you have a half lotus or a full lotus, feel free to take that here. If you prefer to support the flying knee with a block or something, go ahead and stuff something underneath there. And sit nice and tall. A shift back to extend your right leg. We'll move into Janu Shirshasana, taking the sole of the left foot either to the right calf or the inner thigh. We do not put it against the knee. And we'll work our way. This is a fold, so the frosting of the belly onto the thigh. Touching our low back, we breathe out to rise up. Bend the right knee, sneak the left heel behind or in front of the right buttocks, and then either scoot your right heel into the front of the left ankle or cross it over your thigh. We sit up really tall. This one side is a little harder for me. And we twist. Return to the front. Left shin comes a little more parallel to the earth. Right ankle above the right knee. And we sit up nice and tall. Stacked logs. And then Janu Shirshasana, left leg long. Right foot inside the left leg. We sit up really tall. And the frosting. Rise back up, both feet onto the ground. We're going to take a fold, but we're going to take it from our back. So all of the same practices apply. I'm going to sit sideways. We're going to come down onto the mat on our backs. A simple fold. Knees draw into your chest. The hands come underneath your low back, and the legs extend toward the sky. So it doesn't feel like a fold. It doesn't really feel like an inversion, but this is, in fact, a fold. It's a little bit easier because we're more at a 90-degree angle, maybe a little wider or maybe a little less. But you're working the belly in a little bit. You're letting the legs be heavy. And if we were to lower the legs, we're going to breathe in and hold. Press your low back toward the ground. The belly draws in. We're going to lower the legs a little bit. Breathe in. Lower the legs again. We're going to breathe in. Belly really working. This is what helps your low back. And then one at a time, gather the knees in, a happy baby, or just hug the knees in and find some rocking left and right or rolling left and right to soften our low back. If you've done rolling, you can take it to the other side. And then we'll all join together in Shavasana for our final posture. All the way onto the back. Knees bent if need be, but they don't have to be. Full breath in. Excellent breath out. Maybe you lengthen your low back again by lifting your hips up a little bit, tilting them toward the sky, and then unzipping back to the ground. Return to your intention. And this time, repeat it to yourself 3 times as you rock your head left and right, nice and gently. We're going to reawaken the body, the heart, mind, and the breath to the day. Preparing ourselves by gathering the knees in and either finding your way to one side, then to a seat, or rocking and rolling forward and backward to your seat. Hands will draw together at your heart. Take all the wonder, all of the movement, all of the benefit, the intention, the motivation. We'll wrap them up into a little ball, a little breath ball. And we'll use the chant of Om to send that breath ball out and let it bloom and flower all around us as if we're in this bubble of kindness, of intention, of motivation, of merit, so that anyone we come near, a little bit of it peels off and they breathe it in. If you'd like to join in the Om, exhale all the air out of your lungs to start. Breathe in fully. Thumb knuckles come to your forehead, and we honor the practice that brings us together and one another. Namaste. Thank you for joining. I love practicing with you, even though I can't see you. And I'm hoping one day you have a chance to come into the studio. And if not, I'll continue to enjoy our practice together here. Have a great one. Bye.